Christine, remember when you were a kid and you thought that your career was going to be this like perfect straight line trajectory?
Oh my, yes. That is not at all what happened. It ended up being way more of a squiggle than I could have ever imagined. And I am so happy that I embraced all of the squiggles along the way.
Welcome back, everyone, to Embrace the Squiggle, the podcast for anyone whose career or life looks nothing like a straight line. And honestly, this is where all the good stuff happens. We are Colleen.
And Christine.
And this is episode 92 with Kay Tier. Welcome, Kay. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so excited to have you today. So we always start with how we met our guests, and you and I met because we sat next to each other at a conference in New Orleans this summer, back at the WeBank, the Women kind of Business Owners Conference. And we just connected so well and thought, oh, Kay would be perfect to have on our podcast. So excited to have you today.
Nice sliding doors moments, isn't it? We just happened to sit in huge venue, you know, for anyone that doesn't know, that convention center in New Orleans. So to actually sit together, you know, that's, luck, isn't it?
And very much so. And right, when you say huge, I have not ever been to a convention center as big as the one in New Orleans. We were a huge conference with over 4,000 people, and we were only like a little teeny tiny part of it. It just goes on for blocks and blocks and blocks. So, okay, let's jump in now. So, Kay, think back to little Kay. So, what did little Kay want to be when she was growing up?
This is an easy one, actually, because I wanted to be an actress. And when I was, how old was I? I would have been 13 when I applied to a drama school. It's called the Brit School. It's in Croydon in the UK. And you have to apply and get a space in there. And I did what we call our GCSEs. So they're the first things in high school that you do, the first proper exams. So I was 15 and 16 or 14, 16 when I went there. So I remember, I don't even think I said, Mum, should I do this? I just got the form, applied, and then like, oh, Mum, I got into this school. She's like, well, it's 2 hours away from home. I said, no, that's okay. And so I did that commute, you know, 2 hours each way for 2 years, those 2 years to do that. And we used to do 6 hours of drama a week, 3 of dance, 3 of music, but you could choose what you did. And then a little bit of your normal lessons. And I mean, again, it wasn't always an easy experience, but it was something I wanted to do. And it was definitely, really a cool thing to do at times.
Very cool. So when you finished high school, right, what did you do? Where'd you go from there?
Well, when I then went to college, I did some A-levels. I did psychology, German and drama, which my mum was, again, scratching her head. She was glad I went back into academia. She wasn't particularly artsy. And, you know, she said, how do these go together? And I said, well, I like them and, you know, I'm going to just see what happens. But of course, when my journey definitely took a squiggle after that. I went and got a job. I just wanted to work and earn some money, and I got a job in the civil service. And I'm an identical twin, and my twin had gone to university. And I was talking to her all the time, and she's like, I'm still in bed. I've been out last night. I'm just doing this. And I was just sitting there thinking, you know what? I want to do a bit of that. And so I decided to apply to university, and I went and did psychology with a minor in drama at university. So that was what I did then. And then after that, I became cabin crew for 3 years when I left university. So again, I wasn't ready to go fully into work. I wanted to travel, was terrible at saving money. And
like most people are at that age.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I know. I always admire these people. Like, I managed to save £20,000 and went to, I'm like, what? At that age? But yeah, that wasn't me. So anyway, so I knew people that were doing the job, and I was kind of going on some of their trips, and eventually I did the job as well for just over 3 years with 2 different airlines. So that was before I got into the thing that I do now.
Nice. And, you know, I love that whole just kind of squiggle and that whole piece of, right, you find a job because somebody else you knew was doing it, right? I think that's how the majority of us find our first jobs, never mind the best jobs that we have, right?
Yeah.
So you do cabin crew for a few years. My guess is you travel to really fun places. And
Yeah. Now I went a lot to the Caribbean. I worked for well, Caribbean, as you would say. We pronounce it differently here, but we the first airline I did long and short haul. But the great thing was the long haul was week trips at a time often. So you would be going out, 5-star hotel in the Caribbean, here's some money as well, and you're with 14 other people, all there having fun. I mean, brilliant, such fun. But that was just after 9/11, and so of course the industry was a bit topsy-turvy, and I didn't get kept on. And then I went to work for Virgin Atlantic after that. So that was just long haul. So, I was going to Japan and South America and, America a lot. New York became my second home for a good while. And yeah, just got to travel and see things and meet interesting people.
I love that. I really do. I love how you gave yourself permission to just sort of explore and have fun and feed the adventure value or adventure bug. A lot of people ignore it and think, I have to do this. I got to check these boxes, and social expectations or societal expectations mean I have to go to school. So I love that. I love that you gave yourself permission to just sort of explore the world. Amazing. So tell us what you do now.
Well, now I work as a business psychologist and a coach. I have my own business, which is called Business Reimagined. And the name came from one of the courses that we ran, which was called Psychological Fitness. So it's really about helping people understand the inner world. And from that, doing leadership rather than learning lots of leadership models and theories. And I was just doing that for 15 years, working for different management consultancies. And I just kept seeing that this stuff's not really sticking. And I would be talking to clients about, we want a leadership development program. Like, brilliant, you go in. Have you ever done one before? Like, yeah, we did one like 2 years ago. We spent $250,000, £500,000, £1 million sometimes. I said, what was the results? What stuck? Nothing. Like, nothing. What? I'm like, if I lose £10, I'm upset. You know what I mean? How can you? I know it's the company money, but I just couldn't understand that. And when I learned what I do now, so this was at my last consultancy. I worked at 5 different consultancies. And in the last one, I got introduced to something which is known as the inside out understanding. And something just struck me as very true about that, just immediately, even though I just learned very basic kind of couple of things. And I just thought, this is it. And I started putting it into my coaching practice straight away. And I just found it such a simple way of helping people understand how they experience the world. And so much of the other stuff falls away. And it's funny what you were just saying, Christine, about that whole social expectations, because that all falls into that. If we don't realize the forces that are not exactly being put on us, but we just grow up in, and sometimes we feel them in a heavy way, and we do certain things. And look, I've been prey to that as well. But there was something about when I reflect on that early career, I always just thought, I'm just going to do what I enjoy until I don't enjoy it. And that was the same in what I studied, and then when I did the cabin crew, and then when I went on to do, and that step that kept me in good stead. And it was only when I veered off that at times when, again, nothing in my career was bad, but there was a couple of times when I thought, I'm not being paid enough, I'm going to leave. And that move to that next company, again, it still worked out actually, but the fit wasn't right. Like I kind of hadn't done it for a right reason. I don't know, in terms of alignment with the universe, and it jarred for a while.
100%. I never coached to a leadership model. Colleen, have you? What's your take on leadership models? Like a very specific one? I mean, if I think about it, I coached to the Gallup model, right? In that sense, in the strengths-based leadership and the kind of, managers and leaders as coaches as opposed to bosses, like that model. But again, it's like I take that and I integrate 20 other things as well, right? I'm definitely not I didn't take the Gallup information and just teach it as is, right? I don't use their slide decks. I make my own, right? Which I think is what makes the good kind of coaches and trainers in the world, right? We take what kind of the framework and kind of integrate it with the things that are important to us.
Yeah. And I think that the frameworks can be useful for language. Again, like one of the things that I've really done a 180 on is personality assessments, which I've done all throughout my consultancy life, because sometimes they had their own tool and sometimes it was other tools, and sometimes they are useful, and that challenges me in my kind of new belief system that I don't want to use them. I was doing some feedback with someone using the Hogan Development Survey, and actually there were a couple of things that person said, actually, that is me, and it helped hold the mirror up. And sometimes from a language perspective, they're useful, but I do find that this whole thing about personality is fixed. I think it's one of the big fixed mindset things if we're not careful. And we don't think to even question that. But actually, a lot of new research shows that with intention, we can really kind of go out of our comfort zones and change.
I love that. Absolutely. They're so, well, especially with like the whole world of neuroscience and neuroplasticity. We can absolutely change the makeup of our brain, or our neural pathways is probably a better way for me to describe it, which impacts leadership in a really big way. So, yeah, amazing. What would be your words of wisdom just at this point in our conversation? Is there something that you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, the big thing for me is this inside out understanding, and it's really about where our experience of the world comes from. So in its simplest form, we don't see the world as it is. We think we're seeing a video camera, of the world, but we don't. We see a projection of the world. And when we don't understand that, then immediately we can be more affected by the world outside. So, for example, when you ask people, what's stressing you out at work, when I talk to people and I do my coaching, people might say, got too many emails, got back-to-back meetings, I'm not allowed to make decisions, my kids are having trouble at school. And so notice how immediately all of the stuff is out there, but it can't be. It has to be here because, if we don't really care, if we're not too attached to work and what we need to get done, then fine. If they don't want to make that decision, that's on them. Like, I'm just going to get on with what I'm doing and I don't need to be stressed about that. And you can really help people see that it's part of the human experience that we understand that we get stressed because it's the way we see it. But when we learn this inside out understanding, we can really step back from that a lot quicker and get back to our kind of neutral inner peace. And that's really what I do in all of my coaching work and leadership development now.
Yeah, I love that. Just learning ourselves, it's a game changer when we understand that, like, it's like you say, it's 99% of the time it's internal, and even when we get triggered, a lot of times it's like, okay, I mean, I know for me, I've learned to really stop and pause and be like, okay, is this really something going on with that person? Or like I had a situation last week where I received a text message and I was just like, no, this has nothing to do with me. Like, like you're projecting something else onto me and I just let it go. And I can tell you 5 years ago, I would not have let it go, and I was just like, nope, this has nothing to do with me. This has nothing to do with the fact that I left sheets in the dryer. This is something to do with something else. And eventually I'll understand what it was, but I just happened to be the punching bag that day. And even from the flip side and remembering like strength and struggle coexist in all of us. And when we come together, being able to hold somebody else with that element of compassion and knowing that, they're really doing the best that they can in that moment with what they know makes life so much, I just want to say, easier.
Yeah. And life can be easy. That's what, I say to people, that we're kind of taught that leadership, especially, this is about striving and struggle and, clawing your way to the top. And I just say that isn't true. Like that, it just doesn't have to be that way. And when you start to show people what that can look like and say, try it for yourself. But what I like about this whole understanding is that it's intuitive, as I'm talking to you now, straight away saying yes, not because I'm explaining something in a fancy 4 box and, nothing for you to take away, but you understand intuitively that we get triggered by things. We're not trying to, we're not turning ourselves into robots. That's not the aim, but just to understand a bit more about how our experience is created and have a bit more agency in how we respond and also how we want to show up, because that's a choice too. But often people are not taught, like, yeah, you get to choose who you are, not in an inauthentic way, but what do you want to be? Who, do you want to be a role model? Do you want to inspire? Do you want to be known for doing really high quality work? Or you can be anything that you want, but that's not just PR. That's just about seeing what you really love and what you would enjoy doing, and then I think the rest just flows naturally.
Yeah, and I think about from the work that we all do with our clients, right, that when leaders understand this, and then when that trickles down to their whole team understanding this, that the entire workplace just gets so much better for everybody, right? Because it's that whole idea of also realizing that we're all not seeing this the same way, right? We all have a different inner monologue. We all have a different perception on what's happening. Like you said, we all think it's a video camera and we're all seeing the same thing where, you show that same picture to a group of people and the perception is different. I was at a conference back in April and one of the other speakers, I was one of the speakers, one of the other speakers, her whole talk was on perception, right? And how how we perceive things and how others perceive them. We can all look at the same thing and come up with so many different conclusions. And I think we all know that at a basic level. But when you work with a team and a leader and you really can play that out and get everyone to see and understand that, it makes for such a difference on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And to see some of the universal elements that affect team dynamics, so things like hierarchy, so that when you just understand that if you talk first as the leader, you're going to immediately shut off some ideas. Not definitely, because if you've done the work with the team, then they might still know to say, actually, I feel differently. But there's just ways of not so much behavior, but again, I always come back to understanding, because if you understand that your word has a lot of weight, whatever you say, and for people that are less confident than you, then they will maybe not want to say anything. And it's not about you or the way you said it, or you're not a nice person, or that you're creating a psychologically unsafe environment. It's just simply that it's built in us to respect hierarchy, and companies then exacerbate that because we have all this hierarchy. And so they're just the invisible forces at play. So I often talk about making the invisible visible, and I think as soon as you start to see that, then we have more choice, we have more agency.
That happened to me actually last week or the week before. And I'm in this chat group and I responded, it was actually a couple weeks ago, and I responded to just some celebrations that were going on and just expressing how proud I was of this group in terms of their successes this summer. And I received a message back from somebody who sort of sits on the leadership team of this group of humans, asking me to include him in the management message. But I wasn't responding as part of management. I was responding from my heart because I was so incredibly proud of what this team had accomplished. And I was like, but that was just me just saying the words. And I didn't realize that every time I speak, that there's this perception that I was speaking from a leadership perspective. I was like, oh no, I wasn't. Those were just words of expression of just me, Christine. And I didn't realize this piece. And I was like, oh, okay, that's the perception, that every time I speak, it's from a leadership perspective. And I was like, okay, or all right. and making, and I don't always want to be speaking from that lens. I don't want people to, but in the same breath, it's like, maybe I can't get away from that. But I thought that was a really interesting response back kind of behind the scenes in terms of like, well, could you include me in your management message? I was like, what management message? I was like,
Yeah.
my heart was melting and I just expressed it to a group of humans to tell them.
Yeah.
But it is that moment of like, oh, that's how you see me? Okay.
Yeah. Or really, it's how they see you. Well,
It's makes
I
me.
mean, if you say, or well, just how they see the situation, because
Yeah.
you can just see the dynamics there, can't you? How you didn't know and you've just done something kind of honestly and authentically, but someone's got a bit defensive potentially, and I guess we would have to ask them to really find out. And I'm not included, and that was really good, and I want a little bit of that rubbing off on me as well. I mean, who knows exactly, but yeah, there is, I mean, I always say to people that we're we're all in this little VR. It's like we've all got our own one and we're all in our little VR headsets and we think we're all playing the same game. We're all in the same room at the same company and we think we're all playing the same game, but we're not, because our ones have all of our beliefs and mindsets and all of our uniqueness. And the more, like, I find people really get that in teams and things, and as managers, because we say that however you're seeing it, you have no idea what their inner world is, their VR is, unless you ask them. And this is the curiosity part where, you just get to know them. How do you see this situation? Any situation. And that is just like, oh, that's so interesting, because yeah, that's then you really get to a deeper level, don't you?
100%. And, one of the things that I have found has been somewhat of a theme, especially over just the last 6 to 12 months with my clients, is the disconnect from curiosity.
Mm.
And that they take words just at face value, and there isn't that next layer. And actually, this is something that I was taught back when I was in recruitment, and it still sticks to me 20-something years later when I was working for Robert Half. So, global, like all we care about is the stock price, yada, yada, yada. And one of the things in the sales training was +1. And so back then, we all had, or it was suggested that we have a +1 on our computer screen. So when we were doing our outbound calls or inbound, we were reminded to ask one more question. Always ask one more question. And so I actually have had clients take sticky notes out and write the +1 and put it on their computer screen. And it was the reminder. They were like, no, I super love that. But that reminder to lean in and ask one more curiosity question. And a lot of them have, most of them definitely could see the disconnecting curiosity and then the assumptions and the storytelling. But just by having that little sticky note would remind them to take the conversation one layer deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it reminds me of today I ran a coaching demo actually, and I just, something that I thought I'd do, and I have, different communities and different ways of connecting with people, and the person who volunteered to be coached is training to be a coach, and he's working in an organization as a project manager. And so we were just talking about his journey and the 2 practice clients he's got, as part of his qualification. And this point of curiosity was, came up actually. Not from a sense of him not wanting to be curious, but the fact that we kind of stop at the first level, and maybe it's how busy we are, or we're not really taught to go to that deep level. And I think for some people it comes more naturally than others. But again, one of the things he was able to say, well, here are the coaching models that I'm using, and here's where I've got to. And we started to look at that. And I said to him, but one thing was boundaries. This is quite common. So one of the people, they're doing too much and they don't say no, and they've got this accommodating style. And I said, but there's a thought that goes one layer back from that, which must be, I would guess, and I said, based on my own coaching experience, that if then thinking. So if I say no, then they will think I'm lazy, or they will overlook me for promotion, or, I said there'll be some consequence that they're envisaging. And that's the bit, if you get them to see that, that's the thought you challenge there, not what behavior do we do how many, because as soon as you start saying do these things to stop you from losing your boundaries, that's more work, isn't it? Like now I've got all these extra things to do and I'm already overloaded and overwhelmed. And so I just can see so much that isn't the answer. Actually helping people see what is the thinking that's driving the behavior. And that's the level I think that really makes the change. Because if you can break that bit, then the rest, it just doesn't make sense anymore.
And educating them that that neural pathway can be we can fire a new neural pathway. And that, and it can be done at any age. It takes a lot of hard work. What do I say? It takes patience, time, repetition, compassion, because I know, like, for me, there's things that I've worked deeply hard on. And, there's many things where I'm at the point now where I'm like, oh, there's that old pattern, but nope, we're not going down the pathway. But just that awareness of it and knowing that, it's not going to be perfect. And there are going to be moments, especially when I'm tired or unfocused or whatever, when something will pop up, that unconscious habit will show up, but it's being able to stop and pause and then fire the new habit, the new neural pathway. It's doable.
But I would also say though, I think it can be quick. And this is one of the things I kind of challenge people in my coaching and in the work I do, that we're taught that change is hard and that it takes effort, and some things do, but there are times, and I don't know if either of you can think of something where you learn something, maybe you believed something and then you suddenly get the evidence or the insights that actually that wasn't right. And then you don't go back to the old thing. You have shifted in your understanding and your insights, and you realize that, again, a silly example is when I used to live in Australia for a few years, and when we went out for a walk, there was a piece of rope in the hiking walk, and I saw it and I thought it was a snake, because we've been warned about snakes, so it's probably that reticular activated system, isn't it? And of course I was like, what? But then of course when I looked, no, it's a piece of rope. And so I'm not struggling, cognitively, is it snake, is it rope? No, I know now. I just for a moment I didn't see it. And I think we get that on different change levels. We suddenly realize this is the whole thing about experimentation in coaching. When you say just try it and notice what happens, and what you think is going to happen won't happen, or be my guest, like, I guess anything can happen, but my guess is that what you think is going to happen won't happen, and that will be the first step in you breaking free. And sometimes that is it. And sometimes people say, all that time I worried about that. And from a career perspective, I know you're talking about squiggly careers. A lot of people, you'll probably have it too, the two of you, that are going through redundancy and lots of layoffs and things like that. Like we're seeing it a lot here. People having to transition. Yeah. And one person, she said to me, but if I take redundancy and get a new job and then that's not the right one, then, I've failed. And I said, no, it just means you then get another job like that. And that's just such a simple thing. But that was the thing at the end of the whole program. She said, I realized that I really believed that if I got that next move wrong, that was it. There was something very sticky about that belief. And suddenly, just in that conversation, she realized it wasn't true.
And we hear that a lot, right? I get folks who come to me and say, I want you to help me find my next and last career. And I'm like, how old are you? Are you 70?
30. I'm 30.
Right, I'm 30, and I just want to make one more career move and have this be from now till I die. And I'm like, oh. Yeah. And, it's on Friday, I was leading a workshop. I actually posted about it on LinkedIn today. And we started talking about his change. The whole workshop was on embracing change for the work, in this current work moment. And I said, think about all the things that have changed in the workplace. So when I got my first job, and if we had to tell everybody in the company that we're having a holiday party, or next Friday, everybody gets off for some reason, you had to make a flyer, sometimes handwritten, right? If you didn't have access to the computer, because we had one computer for 30 of us. So, you would make a flyer, you would then copy it, you would then put it in mailboxes, you would then fax it to the people at the other offices, right? You'd hang it on bulletin boards, and maybe you'd actually get on the phone and call everybody at their work phone and leave voicemails, right? Where now it's like one quick email and you're done, right? And entire jobs disappeared. I remember helping someone get a job in the early 90s. His entire job was picking things up off a fax machine at one of the big law firms in Boston and delivering the faxes throughout the building.
Yeah.
That's it. 40 hours a week. He picked up and delivered faxes. Right. And it's like,
yeah, that's funny.
People think about things like, well, change is so hard. I'm like, do y'all want to go back to that? Right. Like some of these changes we adapted to really quickly because they served us. And I think sometimes we have to see that they serve us in some way.
Exactly. I think that's when you're talking about the topic of change and this whole thing, well, you've got your resistors and you get your other people. And I'm like, yes, you do. But I think, people are perfectly capable of changing, even, like as much as you say, well, some people, they struggle. Well, maybe. But actually, most people, when you think about, like you say, the huge change, when you think about our smartphones now and how you can do so much on your smartphone, you just don't need to go anywhere hardly and do anything. And I just think, this is just such a miracle, age that we live in. And I just think it's brilliant. You wouldn't want to go back to standing in the bank in that queue and cashing in your check. And, when I cashed my first check online, a few months ago, I was like, this is genius. And like, you just take a photo of it. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. So things are getting so much better. And I do think, again, because change isn't because people don't want to get on board with what's going on. It's because they have so much fear about what might happen. Like that, I mean, in my experience, it's always that. This is hard, and what will happen if I don't manage to do it as quick as management want? I'm going to be out looking for another career that I don't know will be the one, and, and the catastrophizing goes on and on.
Yeah. Change. Gosh, we could talk for hours on that topic.
I did on Friday, hours.
Yeah. I know. Well, and it's so interesting, like how even people are just wired so different, right? Like it's that piece of adaptability, change, whatever we want to call it, and how, I mean, I'm pretty flexible. It's like, oh, you want to do that differently? Okay. And I pick and choose. And if there's something, that I'm like, I'm not sure I'm on board with this, I'll push back or have a conversation. But I think, like for the most part, I'm open. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm happy to try that, try something different and see if it, like what's the worst thing that could happen? We go back to doing it the way we were, like, and that's where people don't, like, they can't see past it. And then, and then you get the people that are resisting because of the fear and the anxiety and, the unknown and, and all of the other stories that come out. And yeah, I mean, this world is just, I mean, every day feels like it's changing. Really.
Right. We're really at a time of super rapid change.
Rapid.
And so
it's rapid. Yeah. Okay, what's your top tip for change for our listeners?
My top tip for change would be, it's a good one. I think you don't care too much about things you don't have control over, which is a simple one, and probably, like lots of people say that, Kat. But the way I mean it is really like radically. So when you talk about change organizations, and and again, I'm a very caring person. I work as a coach, want to help people, but sometimes people laugh at the things. I said that sounds so uncaring, and I said no. But when you look at change, someone like they want me to do this now, and that's so unfair. And I'm like, if you want to choose everything you do, start your own business, because if you work for someone else, nothing is up to you. The end. That's it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this newsflash, everyone. Like, and especially when you work for a big corporation, like I've talked to people, well, there's politics and there's this and we call it the friends and family scheme, and I'm like, guess what? Not up to you. Not up, like, that is not in your control. Like, and if you hate it, you have a few things that you can do. And if you take off the frustration, you find different ways of influencing those people. You find different roles in the company. You move company. You set up your own business. You have tons and tons of options all the time. Like everyone does. And so that would be my big thing, is that notice if you're getting upset about things that are out of your control, that is like the epitome of futility, isn't it?
Energy leakage. Totally. Colleen, what's your biggest tip or your top tip for change?
I mean, my biggest tip when you're the person who has to kind of bring the change is communication, right? To communicate the why, like let people really understand why you're making this change. Because just coming in and saying, we're getting a new payroll system, all anybody does is like, are you effing kidding me? Like, we just changed payroll systems. Like, this is the worst thing we've ever done, right? Like, people are going to spiral. What I do by kind of jumping off a cliff into change, I call the first stage the seriously stage, because it's the are we seriously doing this again kind of moment. But if you're able to communicate it, and I think of the payroll one as a perfect example. I've had so many clients who've changed payroll while I've worked with them. I was like, if you go in and you explain, okay, we're changing payroll companies because this other payroll company is going to charge us double. So, right, like either we have to lay 2 people off or we change payroll companies, right? Or maybe it's as simple as we found that they weren't keeping your information secure, right? Yeah. Who wants the payroll company who's not keeping your bank information secure, right? So that whole communicate the why piece, I think, goes such a long way.
I love it. Those are two strong tips, people.
I just want to add to Colleen's one, and then it would be great to hear from you, Christine. But this thing about communication, I would add like transparency. And for some reason, companies don't trust what people will do. And I've had it even when I'm like senior in the company. And you're just like, but why not tell me? Like, what do you think's going to happen? Well, you might leave. Like, well, yeah, but I'm going to leave anyway if you don't tell me things. And it's so obvious that you're doing things. Like, treat people like adults. If you're honest about it, and look, there's a cost issue and we're doing this and, we want to make more money or whatever it is. But there's no point in trying to mask what it is, because people know. They know how they feel about it, and they know when it's BS, and they know when things are being kept from them. And that is part of the aggravation of change, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What about you, Christine, then? What's your top tip?
B, so I love yours. I love both of yours because they both show up in coaching for me. I would say my top tip for embracing change would be know what you need. Know what you need. Know what your triggers are when it comes to change. But know what you need and ask for it, because everybody, I guess I've kind of got almost a twofold answer here. And then from leadership, have those conversations about what your team needs. Because some might need more context, to Colleen's point. Some people might need more context and more time with the why, and to digest it and process it and ask questions, where others can be, just receive it and be like, yeah, okay, great, awesome. I understand my role, and off to the races they go. But really know what you need in terms of embracing change.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid. Like, if you're not getting the context or enough information, don't be afraid to ask more questions and explain why you're asking questions, in terms of just, what you need in order to feel more comfortable and understand. Because to Colleen's, both of your points, that's where people start to resist, right? Is trying to control the uncontrollable. And usually it's a byproduct of not having enough of context.
Yeah. No, really? I really like that. I think there's, and I would add, there's an aspect of peak performance which I help people understand, which is this innate health. And that's the fact that you will be okay. And I think when we catastrophize, there's that thing that I'm not going to be okay in whatever way we think. And I'm sure you've seen it as well, but I know people that have been through terrible things, and burnout and bereavement and all, I've worked with different people who have been refugees from their countries, and they find a way And so even amidst everything that's going on, and ask the questions and listen and be part of it, but trust that you will be okay and you'll find a way, just like humans have been for centuries and centuries. And if you really believe that, then I think that helps you stay resilient, not to do things to try and be resilient, but just to know that you will find a way.
Yeah.
I love that.
Dang.
This has been such a great conversation. Thanks so much, Kay, for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So we always end with some kind of quick rapid fire questions, right?
Okay.
Our kind of lightning round. And so I'm going to jump in with some of our kind of questions to get to know you a little better.
Okay.
All right. So our first one, what is your go-to pump up song? Like, what do you like to listen to when you need to kind of get that energy going?
Oh, I really like dance music, so it could be something like Bonkers. I think it's by Dizzy Rascal. I'm really bad at knowing the names of things, but it could be something a bit mad like that.
Nice. So what emoji do you tend to use the most in your communications?
Emoji, probably big smiley face. That's probably my go-to. And also just the eyes open, like, oh.
Yeah. But I always call that the teenager kind of angsty teenager moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing a different side to myself now. So.
Yeah. What do you think is scarier, networking or negotiating?
Ooh, negotiating, I think. I think it feels like higher stakes. I enjoy networking, but there was always a thing that I always heard once that stuck with me, that you should always try and make them come down a bit and you go up a bit, and then both parties are happy. Because if they say yes too quickly, you think, oh, I didn't go high enough, and and again vice versa. So that always stuck with me.
Sure. All right. Now, our last one for today is, do you have a book recommendation for folks? Is there a book you would tell people to go read?
Well, I have my own book, which is Overcome Imposter Syndrome, which has just recently finished last month. So it really talks about a lot of that inside out understanding that I told you about. So how to understand the inner world, how to see the invisible parts of conditioning that affect imposter syndrome, and the con in confidence. So some different things like that. So of course, a little plug there, and I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. But if I think about one, the most recent one that really struck a chord with me, and that's not my book, was Invisible Women by Caroline Perez. And that really brought out the feminist in me when it just really looks, I don't know if either of you have read it, but really woke me up to just the ways that, because female voices haven't been included, for, historically, then the way the world plays out. So although my partner got sick of me talking about it every single page and chapter, and another thing. So, but I think it's a real eye opener. So yeah, Invisible Women.
I love it. I have that problem in my family with my father. Yes, we don't see eye on many things in the world of business.
Oh, you'll love that book then, I think.
I'd have to go read it just to drive him directly to his grave.
Start texting quotes every day from it.
I just usually drop something or respond in a certain way, or, it's not so bad anymore that he's wrapped up his board positions. But I tell you, there was a few years there I was like, oh, we are not on the same playing field here.
Well, thanks so much, Kay. If our guests wanted to reach out to you or find you, where can they find you on the internet out there?
My business website is businessreimagined.co.uk. That's all one word, Business Reimagined. I'm on LinkedIn, Kay Tier. There's only one. Look me up, say hello. Would love to talk to you if any of what I've said resonates with you about individual coaching or leadership development, and that whole cultural change piece, seeing that it doesn't have to be that hard, that we don't have to be so overwhelmed. We can reverse this health epidemic, this mental health epidemic that we're seeing. And I would love to help. So get in touch.
Love it.
Thanks. Well, remember, folks, you can go follow Embrace the Squiggle on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn. And we love seeing all of your reviews and your thoughts on Apple Podcast and on Spotify now. You can actually leave notes for particular episodes now, which I'm finding really fun. So keep those coming. This week's episode of Embrace the Squiggle is brought to you by Christine Thody, Coaching and Consulting, offering life, career, leadership, and executive coaching, all rooted in authenticity. So make sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who's in the middle of their own squiggly journey. And hey, if no one's told you today, you're exactly where you need to be. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Is it time for you to add a little squiggle to your career? Join us every week to hear from another guest talk about how they embrace the squiggle.
Subscribe now and find your inspiration.